Hello, in reference to the previous audiobook about minor Xeno race, Ceruthi, let's find out more about Helican Sub-sector, home of that race. Shall we? The Helican Sub-sector is a subsector of the Scarus Sector, about which we'll find out later, which is situated in the Segmentum Obscurus. It is the north part of Milky Way galaxy. Jeromir Forlitz IV is currently the subsector's imperial governor and Lord Commander of the Astra Militarum forces in Helican. He has established strong political ties to the Imperial War Master Honorius present in the sector. The Helican Sub-sector was the site of the Helican Schism, a wave of rebellion, terrorism, and sabotage that swept the area in the early 41st millennium. Notable worlds are Thracian Primaris, Hive world, planetary capital of the Helican Sub-sector. Thracian Primaris glows like an oozing, cataracted eye. The planet has no moons and its populace lives primarily in hive cities scattered across 7/10 of the surface. Guarded by 5 Ramillies-class starforts and with a planetary defense force of 8 million men, the planet is as well defended as any imperial world. Bonaventure, a world where ancient wheel-like tombs were discovered, a possible remnant of the pre-imperial Xenos civilization known as the Ceruthi. This world was the birthplace of the untouchables Elizabeth Beacon and the imperial agent and scholar Kara Swirl, both of whom served the infamous Inquisitor Gregor Eisenhorn. Damask, a world that was colonized in the 700 year of the 40th millennium, and lies on the outer edge of the Helican Sub-sector. Gudrun, civilized world, former subsector, capital planet which has had a human presence for over 3,500 standard years. Hesperus, a notable world that produced agricultural goods such as wine and corn. It is located on a trade route through the Helican Sub-sector. Hubris, ice world, a world named for the enormous pride of the original human colonists who founded a successful society despite the harsh and extreme climates. Thessalon, feudal world, a small feudal world located in the Helican Sub-sector that lies close to the world of Hesperus. In the 343rd year of the 41st millennium, this was the site of an inquisitorial conclave held between notable inquisitors Gregor Eisenhorn, Commodus Voce, an emissary of Inquisitor General Neve, Massimo Ricci, envoy of Inquisitor Lord Rorcan, and Titus Endor. There are a couple more known worlds, but we know only the names without additional information. Now let's find out more about Scarus Sector. The Scarus Sector is an imperial sector of the Segmentum Obscurus that is close to the Eye of Terror and is also adjacent to the Calixis Sector. The Scarus Sector has long served as the primary theatre of operations for the renowned Inquisitors Gregor Eisenhorn and Gideon Ravenor. It was also the site of the protracted Siege of Vraks from the 813th until the 830th year of the 41st millennium. History. The Scarus Sector was discovered during the middle years of the Great Crusade in the late 30th millennium. It was named for Captain Scarus of the Word-Bearers Space Marine Legion's 52nd Company, whose strike cruiser Shield of Scarus and 2 other vessels were lost during a savage warp storm that occurred during the 17th Legion's visit in the Eye of Terror. During the quest now known as the Pilgrimage of Lorgar some 40 standard years before the outbreak of the Horus Heresy. The Scarus Sector's capital is the Hive world of Eustace Majoris. The Scarus Sector borders the Calixis Sector to Spinwed and its known subsectors include Angelis, Antimar, Helican, Kerak and Ophidian. This sector is the theatre of operation for the renowned Inquisitors Gregor Eisenhorn and Gideon Ravenor. The Helican Sub-sector was the site of the Helican Schism, a wave of rebellion, terrorism and sabotage that swept the region in the early 41st millennium. The Ophidian Sub-sector is noted for being the site of the Ophidian Campaign, also known as the Purge Campaign, in which Battlefleet Scarus wrested control of the sub-sector from heretic forces. The campaign lasted from the 240th until 338th year of the 41st millennium, and the imperial victory represented a considerable achievement on such a short timescale. Lately, the Scarus sector has been plagued by invasions of orcs, who attacked en masse during the 13th Black Crusade, a campaign led from the Eye of Terror by Abaddon the Despoiler himself, and greenskin infestation remains a very real problem in this corner of the Imperium of Man. 13th Black Crusade. In the 999 year of the 41st millennium, war came without warning to the Scarus sector, and the opening moves by the forces of chaos saw a large number of plague-ridden space hulks entering imperial space. Though many were intercepted by the space marines and destroyed, some managed to escape the Astartes' attention. Some of these foul vessels of contagion found their way into the Belli's Corona sector, spreading the disease and pestilence amongst the masses throughout the sector. Along with the adjacent Agrippina sector, they were some of the first to bear witness to the rise of hordes of infectious, undead zombies that threatened billions of people on many of the imperial worlds within the sector. This plague was later named the Curse of Unbelief. While the defense of the Gideon Gate from the forces of chaos continued to go badly upon the surface of many worlds in the Cadia system, in particular St. Josmane's Hope and Sola Mariatis, the war in space was fought more on the Imperium's terms. The Cadia system had been the focus of Abaddon's primary fleet actions, and the Imperium's fortunes there changed from day to day. The situation was highly fluid, and the chaotic naval forces found themselves stretched to exploit the victories they had won. A feat the size of which has not been seen since the end of the Gothic War 8 standard centuries earlier had been dispatched from Cypera Mundi, and arrived at the world of Belli's Corona in preparation for a massive imperial counter-offensive into the Gideon Gate. The arrival of this vast armada allowed those imperial vessels that had been fighting continuously since the beginning of the invasion a brief respite. Severely depleted ships' companies were bolstered through indiscriminate press-ganging, and hasty repairs and refits were undertaken on those vessels most in need of them. The imperial reinforcements were split into battle groups, each tasked with bolstering the defenses in a specific sector of the Segmentum Obscurus. The regions around the Eye of Terror encompass many millions of cubic light-years, and only by the concentrated application of resources in those areas in most desperate need could the Imperial Navy hope to make inroads and slow, stall and eventually repel the Chaos warfleets plaguing the region. A small number of Imperial Navy ships won a decisive victory when they managed to hold back a larger Chaos fleet at the Iltherium belt, buying time for Battlefleet Agrippina to arrive and allow the remaining ships to retreat. This course of action, however, left the Agrippina sector open to invasion, and soon the worlds of this sector and the Belli's Corona sub-sector was transformed into nightmarish realms of plague and pestilence. With warp storms rendering astropathic communications erratic, the Segmentum Obscurus High Command continued to experience enormous difficulties coordinating command and control of its forces. Communications from the more distant sectors were particularly affected, and Imperial commanders were advised that those communications they did receive from distant sources were not to be trusted, due to psychodynamic distortion. A particularly implausible report from the Scarus sector indicated that, in addition to chaos attacks, the defenders there faced the menace of the orcs. After-action reports cited Mordax Prime as the initial focus of a massive orc incursion which occurred at the same time as the chaos assault was first hitting the Segmentum. After-action reports cited Mordax Prime as the initial focus of a massive orc incursion which occurred at the same time as the Chaos assault was first hitting the Segmentum. And if this was just an isolated case, High Command would normally have written off the communication as mass information caused by inexperienced troops facing an enemy they had no experience with. However, every major star system in the Scarus sector soon logged similar reports, so they had to be taken seriously until more detailed information was forthcoming. Abaddon had recruited massed warbands of orcs to act as a mercenary assistant to his Chaos Space Marine legions during his 13th Black Crusade. Following up on terror raids and cunning finds by the Night Lords and Alpha Legion traitor legions, many of the orcs banded together into ever-growing tribes that declared themselves as part of the Green Crusade, or Crusade in some sources. Orc spelling is always a matter of conjecture. In imitation of the grand assault of chaos, the unstoppable force of the Green Crusade inundated the Scarus Sector, Scarus to the orcs. The orcs continued putting intolerable pressure on a number of worlds in the Scarus sector, notably Lethe II and Mordax. The Magi Biologus of the Adeptus Mechanicus believed these foul creatures to be working alongside Abaddon the Despoiler to further their own ends, though they did not consider it to be a true alliance as such. More likely the orcs were taking advantage of the opportunity provided by the Despoiler's invasion to launch new attacks against distracted Imperial targets. The situation on these worlds was grim indeed. In particular, Mordax Prime could not be allowed to fall into Greenskin hands, for it was a forge world of prodigious output and its loss would damage the Imperium's war effort. More to the point, the Imperial forces dreaded the monstrosities the orcs might turn the production lines of Mordax Prime to creating. 15 Imperial Guard army groups and 5 legions of cybernetic Adeptus Mechanicus Skitarii troops continued to hold Mordax Prime, yet clearly, such a large body of men was insufficient to stem the green tide engulfing that forge world. The Segmentum Obscurus High Command drew up plans to send a further 35 to 40 regiments of the Imperial Guard to the world, drawn from the regional reserve to help bolster Mordax Prime's defenses. Yet the orcs had set their sights upon capturing Mordax Prime, broadcasting the designs for the planet they referred to as Moradaka Prime on every Imperial channel. Were it not for the fact that Mordax Prime was the sovereign preserve of the Adeptus Mechanicus, Imperial High Command seriously considered petitioning the Inquisition for an exterminatus against the world before its vast resources fell to the enemy. Outcome: the orcs were able to batter down Imperial defenses with sheer doggedness and not a little help from Chaos Space Marines, particularly from the Night Lords and the Black Legion. The orcs were able to batter down Imperial defenses with sheer doggedness and not a little help from Chaos Space Marines, particularly from the Night Lords and the Black Legion. Now the orcs rule Lethe 11 and Mordax, along with most of Imbrium and Ulant. Gudrun and Nysa Stromolo stand on the brink of anarchy, and the weapon forgers of Mordax, rechristened Moradaka Prime by the orcs, are infested with looters of the Death Skulls clan, a truly terrifying prospect to the devotees of the machine god, who know full well the depths of blasphemy against the Omnissiah to which this barbaric Xenos will sink. Battered survivors speak of hundreds of gargants being built from the debris of war by enslaved servitors and the brutal greenskin overseers. The squat, menacing forms of more gargant construction sites climb over the plains of Mordax daily as orc mechaniacs race to be the first to complete their machines. Imperial strategists are now regarding the Green Crusade as a full-scale orc warg. Its warlords are unknown, but it would appear that Gazkal and Nazdreg are not among them. Only Thracian Primaris and Elnor Delta have held firm against the Green Crusade, bolstered first by the intervention of a Black Templars crusade, and later by the stalwart defense mounted by the Salamanders chapter and many other Space Marine contingents. The situation is grim in Scarus, and none can see an end to the infestation given the dire situation across the region. Notable people of the sector. This sector is the theatre of operations for the renowned Inquisitors Eisenhorn and Ravenor. Subsectors: Angela Sub-sector, Anti-Mar Sub-sector. Helican Sub-sector was the site of the Helican Schism, a wave of rebellion, terrorism and sabotage that swept the area in the early 41st millennium. Kerak Sub-sector. Ophidian Sub-sector. Vince's Sub-sector. Imperial rule was discontinued in the Vince's Sub-sector in the 85th year of the 41st millennium after it was engulfed by a great and turbulent warp storm. The end. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this audiobook, leave a comment and like. Visit my Facebook, Blogspot or Patreon. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.